Chapter 1, The Whisper in the Mines. Feel the damp cold rising from the bowels of the earth, laden with silver dust and the metallic scent of ancient fear. Hear the echo of bare footsteps in tunnels so deep that not even the light of Inti sun dares to penetrate. See, in the black rock walls, eyes that are not human, but that observe, always observe. This is the kingdom of Supay. In the heights of the Andes, where the apis, sacred mountains, touch the sky with their snowy peaks, the Incas knew that the universe did not end upwards, but began downwards. There, in Ukhu Pacha, the underworld, rest the roots of trees, the bones of ancestors, the metals that gleam like tears of the earth, and the souls that left Kay Pacha, the world of the living. Supay is not the devil, he never was. He is the necessary guardian, lord of the hidden, of what decays to be reborn, of what sleeps before revealing itself. His eyes blaze not with anger, but with attentiveness. His horns are not those of a demon, but of an Andean deer, a symbol of one who knows the secret paths between plains. In the Inca worldview, there is no life without death, nor harvest without roots. To deny Supay is to deny Pachamama herself, for she, Mother Earth, has her face turned towards the sky and her entrails surrendered to it. Therefore, the miners enter the mines with respect, not with courage. They carry coca leaves, pour alcohol on the ground, and whisper, "Auntie, don't take me today." Auntie, aunt, is what they call Supay in the Potosi mines, like a feared but familiar relative, a force with whom one negotiates, not fights. But there is a secret that the ancients kept: Supay does not choose whom he takes. He takes those who forget, those who enter the depths without offerings, those who extract gold as if the earth were their enemy, those who laugh at the fear of others as if the underworld were a legend. Now, a young miner named Ilari descends for the first time into the oldest mine in Cerro Rico. His grandfather warned him, take cocaine, take alcohol, and never say you don't believe. But Ilari, educated in the city's schools, thinks Supay is superstition. It's just gases, he says. Just rocks. He enters alone, without offerings, without respect. And in the depths, something answers. Not with anger. With silence. Because Supay has heard millions of arrogant footsteps. And he knows that, sooner or later, everyone learns, what lies beneath the earth doesn't ask permission to exist. It only demands that you remember it's there. Chapter 2, Ilari's First Mistake. Feel the weight of the silence that swallows the sound of his own heart. Hear the slow dripping of mineral water in caves that have never seen the sun. Watch Ilari's lantern flicker, as if even the flame fears what is to come. He descends too quickly, too high in his song of defiance. There are no spirits here, only stone. Only work. But the mine walls are not inert. In the Inca vision, each rock has Qhapaq, spirit, each vein of silver is a nerve of Pachamama. Each step Ilari takes without offering is like a punch to the belly of his own ancestry. His grandfather Kusi, a Yatiri, reverently prepared 3 coca leaves, a thread of chicha, and a prayer in Simi runes before each descent. Ilari laughed at this, calling it old age and fear disguised as devotion. Now, alone in the bowels of Cerro Rico, he feels something he can't name, not cold, not heat, but presence. Suddenly, the lantern flickers. The flame lengthens, pulled by an invisible force, and Ilari sees, or thinks he sees, a tall figure in the shadows, eyes like embers, deer antlers shrouded in mist, perhaps wings, perhaps just dancing darkness. He recoils, hurts himself, and his blood is sucked by the rock as if the mountain were thirsty. The wound dries instantly, cold to the touch. Further on, he finds the statue of Tia, obsidian eyes, an unlit cigarette between her lips, surrounded by ancient offerings. He should leave something, but, wounded in his pride, he turns his back and says, "I don't need the protection of a god of clay." At that instant, the ground trembles slightly, and a stone falls, partially blocking the way back. Ignoring the sign, Ilari lunges forward, digging as if the silver were his redemption, but the air grows heavier, the sounds distort, and the shadows take on a movement of their own. Then, he hears, not with his ears, but within his own mind, a question: "Why did you come, if you didn't come to listen?" Ilari stops, his heart racing. He doesn't answer, but Supay already knows. He came out of necessity, not respect, to take, not to receive, as an invader, not as a son. In the depths of Ukhu Pacha, this is worse than blasphemy, it is oblivion. Faced with 3 identical tunnels, he chooses the middle one, unaware that there, it is not the feet that choose the path, but the heart. And his heart has not yet learned to speak the language of the earth. Chapter 3, The Path the Traveler Chooses. Smell the sulfur and damp earth, as if the mountain itself were breathing. Hear the creaking of the rock settling, not with anger, but with geological patience. See the tunnel walls gleam slightly, as if tiny silver crystals whispered secrets in reflected light. Ilari advances along the middle path, but the further he walks, the more the tunnel closes in on him. The ceiling descends, the walls tighten, the air becomes dense, almost liquid. When he tries to return, he discovers that the path has disappeared, not through collapse, but through absorption. In Ukhu Pacha, paths are not fixed, they respond to intention. On his knees, panting, he sees a human shadow moving within the rock, hears the deep rumble of the sleeping mountain, and, for the first time, remembers his grandfather's words, Supay is not an enemy. He is a mirror. He closes his eyes, breathes, and, for the first time, feels the mind not as an obstacle, but as a living presence. Then the lantern goes out, and Supay appears. Not as a monster, but as a tall man, dressed in vicuña skins, with eyes that hold fire and mourning, horns covered in silvery moss, and a condor skull chalice in his hands. You came to steal, he says in a voice like stone sliding over stone. Ilari tries to justify himself, but knows, deep down, that he entered empty-handed, devoid of respect. Supay offers the chalice, drink. And see. As he drinks, Ilari doesn't taste, he feels memory. He sees his grandfather honoring the mine, ancestors burying the dead with seeds, enslaved bodies transforming into whispers on the walls, the mountain bleeding silver from pain, not wealth. This is Ukhu Pacha, says Supay. It's not a prison. It's a womb. Everything that goes down, one day rises, but only if it is remembered with truth. Shaken by the weight of his forgetfulness, Ilari asks what he should do. Supay replies, to return, but not as he came, with offerings, with his name pronounced with respect, with a heart that recognizes the earth as mother, not enemy. A passage opens where his heart finally inclines, but with a warning, if he forgets again, the mountain will guard him forever. Ilari emerges into the light of the setting sun, still holding the empty chalice, and for the first time thanks Inti not for illuminating, but for revealing. But his return will not be peaceful. Down below, Supay has already sensed another presence, men with machines, plans, and greed, who come to empty the mountain. They believe in nothing, not in Supay, not in Pachamama, not in death itself. And this time, the guardian of the depths will not wait for them to ask for forgiveness. Chapter 4, The Men Who Don't Hear the Earth. Feel the metallic roar of the excavators tearing through the mountain's skin like iron claws. Hear the dry crack of the rocks being drilled without ceremony, without song, without a name. See the gray dust rise to the sky, not as an offering, but as a lament. They call themselves engineers, but in Supay's eyes they are thieves with maps. A foreign company arrived at the foot of Cerro Rico promising modernization and efficiency, but their eyes only see reserve, not mountain, or, not spirit. They enter with white helmets, steel boots, and the certainty that the earth is inert, a corpse to be dissected. They leave no coca leaves, no chicha spills, no whispers. But Ukhu Pacha senses it. In the depths, Supay awakens not as a guardian, but as a defender, acting with the precision of geology, slow, inevitable, just. Sensors fail, tunnels collapse without injuries, workers hear voices in forgotten languages. The engineers laugh, calling it a collective suggestion. But the operations chief, Rivas, begins to dream of a deer with black antlers, clay hands, and an insistent question, did you ask permission? On the fifth night, the excavations open a chamber absent from the maps. In the center stands an ancient statue of Supay, larger than a man, made of volcanic stone and veins of silver that shine like living veins. The workers recoil, some kneel instinctively. Rivas, touching the statue, hears directly in his mind, brother from the surface, did you come to take or to learn? Frightened, he tries to deny the impossible, but the voice answers, the impossible is what the proud call truth that they don't want to see. That night, he doesn't sleep. Through the window, he sees Cerro Rico not as a geological obstacle, but as a living presence. The following day, he forbids further drilling in that area, facing protests from his superiors and mockery from the team. There's something here we don't understand. And until we understand it, we won't touch it, he states firmly. The local miners, in silence, leave an offering at the tunnel entrance, coca leaves, alcohol, and a necklace of seeds. Supay observes, not satisfied, but attentive. Perhaps, among the invaders, there is one who can still hear. But time is running out. The company already plans to use dynamite on a large scale. And if that happens, it won't just be a collapse, it will be a scream. And when the earth screams, not even the heavens remain indifferent. Chapter 5, The Cry of the Mountain. Feel the tremor that comes not from the ground, but from the silence, the one that precedes the wrath of the earth. Hear the wind in the heights of the Andes change its tone, as if the apis were preparing to witness something ancient. See the clouds gathering over Cerro Rico, not with rain, but with foreboding. The company, rejecting the pause imposed by Rivas, sends Valdez, a man with hard eyes and hands that have never touched the earth without gloves, to resume operations at full force. Dynamite tomorrow at 6, he decrees, ignoring the murmurs of the miners and the silent signs of the spiritual world. Ilari, now transformed, leaves a careful offering at the mouth of the mine, a quint of flour, fresh coca, and a bottle of liquor with a strand of his hair, a gesture of surrender, not of fear. But Supay no longer merely observes. He responds. At dawn, Valdez lights the fuse. The explosion is deafening, but what comes next is worse. An absolute silence gives way to an ancient roar rising from the bowels of the mountain, as if the earth itself had a pulse. The walls sweat a dark liquid, smelling of sulfur and blood, instruments fail, lights flicker, and forms made of smoke and memory dance in the shadows. Tunnels collapse like jaws, but the statue of Supay remains intact, its eyes now gleam with real fire. Rivas, desperate, enters the mine and finds Valdez alive, but broken. He spoke to me. He said the mountain remembers all names. On the walls, names emerge engraved in the rock, slaves, miners, children, and a phrase in Simi rune, he who touches the earth without asking will be touched by the earth without warning. Rivas understands, then, that Supay is not vengeful, he is a memorial. He guards not only the dead, but the truth of how they lived, and died. Upon leaving, Rivas forbids further drilling and resigns that same day. Before departing, he enters the mine alone and leaves a simple offering, water, coca, and a whispered promise, I will never forget. Supay observes, not smiling, but closing his eyes, as if finally resting. However, the peace is brief. High above, Inti, the sun god, also felt the mountains cry. When the balance between the three worlds, Hanan Pacha, Kay Pacha, and Ukhu Pacha, is broken, the celestial gods do not remain indifferent. A meeting approaches, not of men, but of cosmic forces. And Supay will be called to account, not for having acted, but for having waited so long before doing so. Chapter 6, The Judgment of the Three Worlds. Feel the rarefied air of the heights, where the wind carries not only snow, but the voices of the apis, the mountains that are gods. Hear the silence that settles when even the condors stop flying. See the sky tinged with gold and shadow at the same time, because Hanan Pacha and Ukhu Pacha meet, and Kay Pacha trembles in the middle. Supay is summoned, not by order, but by necessity. In Inca cosmology, the universe is a living fabric woven in three planes that must remain in balance: the upper world, Hanan Pacha, ruled by Inti and Mama Killa; the present world, Kay Pacha, guarded by Pachamama; and the lower world, Ukhu Pacha, under the dominion of Supay. When the mountain screamed after the explosion, the fabric tore, and the guardians must now restore the Aini, the sacred principle of reciprocity. At the top of Ozangate, Supay reunites with the gods. Inti appears as a golden man whose eyes reveal, not blind. Mama Killa, enveloped in liquid silver, bears serenity and mourning on her face. Pachamama manifests as a living presence, hair of moss, eyes of lakes, voice of rivers. There is no judgment, but dialogue. Supay defends himself, they pierced my womb without asking. Inti reminds him, but you made the earth scream, and the scream echoed to the heavens. Supay replies, better a scream than a forgotten silence. Pachamama, with maternal wisdom, affirms that men are not enemies, but lost children, capable of remembering, if guided with compassion. Faced with this, Supay proposes a new pact, that those who still hear have a voice, that those who have forgotten be taught, and that every entry into the mines be preceded by respect, gratitude, and memory of those who came before. The gods accept. Inti warns, if the balance is broken again, it will not only be the mountain that screams, it will be the world. The meeting ends, and Supay descends back into the depths, transformed. He is no longer just the guardian of shadows, but the mediator of the pact between the three worlds. In the following weeks, subtle signs emerge in the mines, dreams in Simi runes, machines that only function after offerings, fresh water dripping in dry tunnels. Ilari teaches the young men to honor the earth. Rivas returns not as an extractor, but as a protector. And on full moon nights, the miners not only leave alcohol for Tia, now they whisper, Supay, brother of the shadow, teach us to listen. But the balance is fragile. In distant cities, men in offices are already planning new projects, new machines, new promises. They don't know that, this time, they will find not just one mountain. They will find three worlds united, and a guardian who now speaks not only with shadows, but with the voice of the entire cosmos. Chapter 7, The Pact in the Depths. Smell the aroma of coca leaves burning over a low flame, mingled with the sweet scent of chicha poured onto the earth. Hear the low chants of the miners gathered at the mine entrance, not in despair, but in alliance. See the shadows dance on the gallery walls, not as threats, but as witnesses. The pact was sealed, not with paper or laws, but with presence. After the judgment of the three worlds, something changed in the bowels of Cerro Rico. The earth is not only quiet, it is attentive. Ilari leads the new ritual before Tia, the clay statue that now seems to breathe with the smoke of the offerings. Each miner brings something: roasted corn, sweat mixed with water, a whispered promise, and all say, "Today, I work with respect. Today, I remember those who came before. Today, I ask permission." And, for the first time in generations, there are no accidents. Not because the mine has become safe, but because it allows it. Supay no longer manifests as a terrifying shadow, but in subtle signs: veins of silver found at the right time, unstable tunnels that collapse only after everyone has left, dreams that reveal safe paths. The elders smile. He doesn't want servants. He wants partners. But the real test comes from outside. A government delegation, accompanied by international executives, proposes replacing the miners with machines, robots, sensors, remote drilling. "You won't need to go down anymore," they say, promising zero human risk. Ilari asks, "And who will make the offering?" The executive laughs. That night, Supay visits Ilari in a dream and shows him a desolate future: empty tunnels, a depleted mountain, a silence so profound that not even souls can return, because there is no one to receive them. "They think they exclude me," says Supay. "But by excluding the human, they exclude respect. And without respect, there is no pact. Only plunder." Ilari then proposes something unprecedented: that the machines themselves enter into the pact. Before turning on a robot, coca leaves are placed on its control panel. A moment of silence is programmed before drilling, not out of superstition, but for memory. Some scoff, but the elders agree. Even Riva supports it: if the machine touches the earth, it enters into the pact. And, surprisingly, it works. Sensors last longer, drillings are more precise, and a robot even stops before an intact Inca tomb, not out of failure, but out of respect. Supay doesn't reject the new, he only demands that it remember the old. But high above, Inti observes cautiously. An ancient prophecy echoes among the Qhapaq: when metal speaks without a human voice, and the earth is touched without a feeling hand, Ukhu Pacha will close forever, and the dead will have nowhere to go. Time is running out. The next phase of the project involves continuous autonomous drilling, without humans, without pauses, without rituals. And Supay knows, if that happens, there will be no scream. There will be eternal silence. And, in the Inca worldview, silence is worse than death. Chapter 8, The Silence That Comes After the Scream. Feel the constant hum of the machines that never sleep, a sound that doesn't belong to the earth, but to the void between the stars. Hear the absence of chants, of whispers, of names being called in the tunnels. See the tunnels illuminated by cold lights, without shadow, without soul. The new phase has begun. Autonomous robots drill through Cerro Rico 24 hours a day. Humans enter only for maintenance, and even then, in a hurry, without offerings, without looking at the walls. The company calls this progress, the engineers, efficiency. But in the villages at the foot of the mountain, the grandmothers close their windows at nightfall. The earth is too quiet. Even the spirits are afraid. Supay has disappeared, not in dreams, not in the shadows, nor in Tia's eyes, whose clay now cracks as if dying of spiritual thirst. Ilari persists, leaving offerings even on the robot's panels, but feels like he's talking to a wall. "Machines don't listen," says Rivas, "and men no longer teach them to listen." The worst, however, happens in Ukhu Pacha. The souls of the recently deceased wander aimlessly, confused, because the thread between the worlds unravels, without chants, without whispered names, without the pact that guides them. Pachamama responds with murky rivers, twisted plants, and tasteless corn. Inti, from Hanan Pacha, sends signals: droughts, unseasonal snowstorms, scorching sun, but men call this climate change, not cosmic mourning. Until, one night, a main robot stops. Not due to a technical failure, but out of refusal. Before an ancient altar hidden in the depths, with petrified coca leaves, llama bones, and a silver chalice inscribed with Simi runes, his screen displays an unprogrammed word: AYNI. Reciprocity. Ilari understands. The earth imprinted memory on the metal, and the machine, touched by the mountain's Qhapaq, chose to stop. But it is a final warning. If the silence continues, Ukhu Pacha will close. The souls will be trapped. The sacred cycle of life, death, and rebirth will be broken forever. Supay knows he can no longer wait for humans to remember. He needs to force memory. And, in the depths, he begins to move not as a guardian, but as a door. Because, if the living do not descend with respect, the dead will rise. And the world of the living is not prepared for what comes from the shadows when they have voices. Chapter 9, When the Dead Rise. Feel the cold that doesn't come from winter, but from the void between worlds. Hear the first cry, not of pain, but of confusion, echoing from the deepest galleries. See the robots' lights flash red, not from a technical malfunction, but from their presence. They are rising. Not like ghosts from scary stories, but like lost souls, disoriented, hungry for a name, for memory, for a thread that connects them to the cycle. Since the pact was broken by the silence of the machines, the path to Ukhu Pacha has narrowed, and now, under the pressure of oblivion, it has cracked. Supay didn't call them, he released them. Because, in the Inca worldview, a soul without a path transforms into a supayla, a wandering spirit that brings imbalance wherever it goes. On the cameras, figures in ancient clothes appear, sensors capture voices in Runa Simi without microphones connected, a technician wakes up with damp earth on his hands and the name, Qhapaq etched into his arm. The company denies it, but even the skeptics fall silent when, at midday, the sun goes out for 3 minutes, no clouds, no eclipse. Inti is furious. Pachamama trembles. And Supay is sad. Ilari gathers the miners and reveals the truth, they are not demons. They are our ancestors. They want to be remembered. Disobeying the company, he organizes an ancient ceremony at the mouth of the deepest mine. He sings the Harawis, pours chicha, lights Muna incense, and calls out, one by one, the names whispered on the walls, Tupakamaru, your path is open. Mama Killa guides you. Supay receives you. Return to your roots. Rest. Be reborn. The voices cease. The cold recedes. The robot lights return to normal. But it is not the end. In the deepest chambers, something still stirs, not a soul, but something greater. Supay prepares for his final act. If the living do not restore the pact willingly, he will close Ukhu Pacha forever, not with stone, but with absolute oblivion. And when that happens, there will be no more purposeful death. Only disappearance. Only emptiness. That night, Ilari dreams of Supay for the last time. The guardian is standing with his back to him, before a door made of intertwined roots. Tomorrow, he says without turning around, they will decide whether the world continues to turn, or stops breathing. Ilari wakes with a fresh canta seed in his palm, alive, as if plucked from the womb of the earth at that very moment. He knows what he must do. But time is short. At dawn, the company plans to reactivate all the robots, without ceremony, without name, without soul. And this time, there will be no second chance. Chapter 10, The Last Pact. Feel the weight of dawn, not as a promise, but as a final opportunity. Hear the wind in the heights carrying not only snow, but the names of those who have already departed. See the first sunlight touch Cerro Rico, and stop, as if Inti were also waiting. Ilari did not sleep. In the darkness before dawn, he gathered all those who still remember, miners, healers, elders, and even Rivas, now detached from the company, wearing simple clothes and a seed necklace. In his hand, he holds a clay chalice made by his grandmother. Today we don't go down to extract, he says firmly. We go down to ask for forgiveness. Before the main mine, where the robots await inert like statues of a forgotten god, Ilari neither shuts them down nor destroys them. He kneels and offers, he pours chicha on the sensors, places coca leaves in the energy compartments, and, with sacred charcoal, writes on the metal walls, in Simi runes, we remember. We honor. We ask for passage. The others join in chorus. They sing the Harawis of the ancients, calling the names of the dead not as an appeal to fear, but as a bond of memory. And, for the first time in centuries, they ask Supay not for protection, but for partnership. Brother of the shadow, we are no longer thieves. We are guardians. Let us take care of what is yours, as we take care of what is ours. At that instant, something changes, not with a bang, but with a sigh. The lights of the robots ignite in a soft amber, like sacred embers. The air in the galleries warms. And from the depths rises a guttural, harmonious sound, the song of Ukhu Pacha answering the song of Kay Pacha. Supay appears, not as a shadow or a monster, but as a balanced presence, with eyes that gleam with resolved sadness and horns wrapped in fresh moss. In his hands, he holds not a skull chalice, but a golden corn seed. You remembered, he says with a voice of wind, rock, and root. So the pact is renewed. Now, you are my eyes on the surface. And I will be your memory in the depths. He hands the seed to Ilari, plant it where the earth has been wounded. And teach those who come after, one does not take without giving, one does not live without remembering, one does not die without a path. The miners weep, not from fear, but from relief. In the following weeks, the mine transforms. The machines continue to function, but only after the daily ritual. Engineers learn words in Simi rune. Even the company, impressed by the inexplicable efficiency and the absence of accidents, adopts a cultural protocol of respect. But the true miracle springs from the earth, where Ilari plants the seed, an ear of corn with silvery kernels grows, the mountain's gold given in life, not ripped away in greed. Supay does not disappear. Nor does he need to appear anymore. Because now he lives in the gestures of those who remember. And, on full moon nights, when the wind blows from the south, the miners leave a bottle of alcohol at the mine mouth, but they no longer whisper, "Don't take me." They say, "Brother Supay, walk with us." This story comes from the Inca tradition and the Andean worldviews of the Quechua and Aymara peoples, kept alive for generations in the central Andes, despite colonization and forgetting. If it touched you, comment, what ancestral lesson do you take from it?